So this chapter deals with assistive technology to support reading. And we do know by now that in the early grades, students are learning how to read. But once they get beyond the third grade, they're reading to learn. So they're really dealing with content literacy at that point. So there are going to be a diverse group of students and students with disabilities that may need reading supports. And so those children may consist of children who are diagnosed with a learning disability or dyslexia, children who have been diagnosed ADHD, children with intellectual disabilities and cognitive impairments, children who are more auditory learners, children with low vision or blindness, poor vision, and students that are considered at risk. So there are going to be certainly new demands placed when children start to read for content. They need to understand what they are reading to be successful, so they need to comprehend it. So technology can be useful. It can be a compensatory tool. So we're looking at text-to-speech, highlighting, and alternate formats. So in alternate formats, we might be using e-text and such things as DAISY or PDF files, MP3 files, large print, and Braille format for some students. With e-text, there is unrestricted access if out of copyright in public domain or older than 70 years. There's restricted access, of course, or fee-based if copyrighted. Certainly, though, many districts are obtaining licenses for texts that are needed. There are such things such as Bookshare, Learning Ally, and the National Instructional Materials Access Center certainly could help with formatting of text that is needed in e-text format. With Bookshare, pretty much we're looking at a very extensive online library of accessible books, and you can certainly download these to a mobile device or a computer, or something called Read2Go app. And the benefits of Bookshare is that you can see highlighted words on the screen, hear text being read aloud, and read with digital braille or enlarged fonts. And Bookshare is something that I've mainly encountered with children with visual impairments or blindness, but certainly I would look into that for all children. We do know that public domain, I've accessed Project Gutenberg. There are certainly a lot of the classics, but there's other sources of public domain. So really what we're seeing here is teachers need to do their research in terms of accessing text and e-text. I use my local libraries. Using text under copyright, you are allowed, there are authorized users are allowed to reproduce copies in specialized formats, primarily for children with disabilities. So we do need to have a sense of copyright issues, again, it requires some research on your part as the teacher as to usability and what you can use. Certainly a proof of disability may be required. Text-to-speech writers are used a great deal, such as scanning reading systems called the Kurzweil Reader is one, WYNN, and Read and Write Gold. I am not familiar with all of these. I am certainly familiar with the top one, the Kurzweil Reader system. But also there's using devices from camera to snap a picture of any print material, and then you can enlarge it. You can do text-to-speech after that point. So it's just a matter, again, of using our technology support in our schools, being creative, and knowing where to find the technology. The accessible instructional materials 2000 is actually part of our law, and so we need to make sure that the material is accessible. So under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, we need to make sure that the local education agencies, meaning our districts, have to ensure that instructional materials are accessible and that they're provided. The materials are provided in a timely manner. So we need to work with our visual impairment consultants. We need to be organized enough to be able to let them know way ahead of time what we're going to be teaching so that they can help us to design the materials we're going to use in our classrooms. We also need to be working with our hearing impairment consultants and other consultants as well. So if a child is unable to gain information from printed materials and they need a specialized format, again, we can get that support if needed. The National Instructional Materials Access Center, which was brought up in a slide or two ago, is the National Repository of National Instructional Materials. So this is certainly an organization that you should be familiar with. And so they can support you in terms of your supporting the children in your classroom. There are commercial e-readers, as we know. Pretty much, though, I think if you have a standard iPad or Android or computer, you can have things read to the child. But a lot of these commercial e-readers are much less expensive. And so that's the other thing in terms of being able to do what we can do. We don't need the most high-tech system to help children. We just need to be able to look at the technology and figure out what is it we need it to do. And so certainly looking into commercial e-readers is one thing that we can do for much less of a price. There also is certainly commercially available audio materials. We use them all the time. I download podcasts, not as frequently as I'd like, and a lot of them are free, but some of them have a price to them, such as audible.com, but many of them are free as well. Your local library would have podcasts. iTunes has some free podcasts. Some you have to pay for, but some are free. And so again, it requires us to be researching and figuring out what we need. Again, online libraries of interactive ebooks. There are so many good ones. I know that I'm very familiar with RazKids. That is one that is used a great deal in districts. But take a look at all of these and see how they'll work for you. Reading tools for students with more severe levels of disability. Again, we are talking about iPads work really, really well. The child's going to potentially need visual as well as audio. So some children with more intellectual disabilities might need to access the technology in a different manner. It might be a little difficult for them to use a pointer finger. We might need to adapt what it is we're teaching. We might need to shorten the text, reduce number of words, add pictures, and use a predictable structure. So that would involve for us to know the technology well enough to design it in such a way that the child can learn. Learning Ally might be a source for us. It's a source of audio versions of textbooks and other school reading decks. You have to have a print disability to register, so certainly you might need to show evidence that you are a teacher of a child or children with disabilities. They're read by human readers, not synthesized speech, so that's nice. And there's images, figures, etc. Johnston is a company that has been around for a long, long time. I worked with them when I was a graduate student. And they do produce excellent materials, again, for children with more, with levels of intellectual disabilities, with visual and auditory supports, highlighting features, core content that can be adapted, and age-appropriate content as well, and incorporates principles of universal design for learning. The National Reading Panel, as we know, came out with a study a while ago that said we need to really focus on these 5 areas of reading instruction for children to become readers, and they're essential to focus on. So we want to be looking for technology that helps with phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency in our reading comprehension, and vocabulary. So for some children with disabilities, they're going to have difficulties in decoding words. Certainly in comprehension, because they're struggling so hard to read a word or to be fluent, and also focusing on the text. So we can use such things as computer activities that are effective remediation tools that are systematic, repetitive, like direct instruction. They're engaging and they're individualized. And so this is, we might be needing to use software, licensed software that is individualized for the child. That also will keep data for us so that we know where the child's at with each level and where the child needs to go. There is good software out there, so we don't need to reinvent the wheel, which provides visual displays and sounds and to highlight patterns and to engage students. Slows down, exaggerates, and alters sounds to make sound patterns easier to recognize. Fluency software. Computer provides opportunity for students to practice reading aloud. Again, RAS Kids is what I'm familiar with, but certainly I'm also familiar with Read Naturally, and many of you are using that software. Reading Assistant and Start to Finish I'm not as familiar with. In the area of vocabulary, certainly there's a lot that you can do for free as well. I use Kahoot a lot. You can develop your own flashcards on the using Kahoot, but the point is that students need multiple exposure to vocabulary words in rich contexts. So again, more examples for you. In reading comprehension, students have to be able to manipulate the text, read the text aloud, and so good software will also provide a range of supports helping the child to do that, and again maintain the data for us, so the record of performance. I am not familiar with Thinking Reader, so again there's so much technology out there. I guess that's the point here, and so this might be something that you would take a look at. Scholastic obviously is an excellent company. And one other thing is you can try these products a lot of times for like 30 days free so that you can see will it work with a particular student or students. So the point is also that technology does help to motivate a lot of children. You can find all kinds of reading material on the internet that's interesting to the student. Books, articles, newspapers, websites, discussion boards, blogs. So the student has to be provided with the tools and taught, again, to use the tools. Teaching is an essential component of both the technology and the content area. And that takes us through this chapter.